The attack on human children. The peaceful human colony on the distant planet of Zephyra had never known true danger. Surrounded by vast forests, sparkling lakes, and bustling settlements, the humans had made a home here for generations. They built schools, farms, and homes for their children, ensuring that the future was bright. But everything changed in an instant. One quiet afternoon, as the children of Zephyra played in the fields near their school, the skies darkened. It wasn't a storm. No, this was something far worse. The ground trembled as massive alien ships, like shadowy giants, descended from the sky. The inhabitants of Zephyra had no warning, no time to prepare. The first wave of ships arrived without announcement, without mercy. The aliens who landed were from the Araxian Empire, a race feared across many star systems for their advanced technology and ruthlessness. They had heard of humanity's rise and viewed it as a threat. Their mission was simple: to capture, enslave, and destroy what they could not control. In the blink of an eye, the once peaceful colony was turned into a war zone. Alien forces flooded the streets, their weapons firing with deadly precision. Human adults fought back with whatever they had, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The real target, however, was not the adults. It was the children. The Araxians knew that the best way to break a species was to strike at its future. The children of Zephyra were vulnerable, easy to capture. They were not prepared for the brutality of the alien invaders. Panic spread through the colony as children were snatched from their families, pulled into the grasp of the alien soldiers. Parents screamed in horror, desperate to protect their young ones, but the Araxians showed no mercy. One child, a young girl named Leela, watched in terror as her friends were taken. The towering aliens moved like machines, sweeping up the helpless children in their massive hands. The fear in Layla's heart was overwhelming, but she knew she had to run. Her parents had taught her how to survive, to hide when danger approached. As the chaos unfolded around her, she darted into the nearby woods, her small body moving swiftly through the underbrush. Layla's heart pounded in her chest as she ran deeper into the forest. She had no plan, no direction, only the overwhelming need to escape. The sounds of the battle, the screams, the blasts of energy weapons, and the roar of alien ships faded as she ran further away from the village. She finally stopped, breathless and exhausted, her mind racing. She had to find a way to warn the others. She had to find a way to stop this. Meanwhile, the alien invaders continued their assault. They had gathered dozens of children, securing them inside their ships with chilling efficiency. The Araxians moved like a well-oiled machine, capturing, controlling, and subduing. They were ruthless in their mission. The children were nothing more than trophies, symbols of their dominance over the human race. On board one of the alien ships, the commander, an imposing figure named Halzar, watched the operation unfold with cold eyes. He knew the importance of this mission. The humans had become a nuisance, and their ability to resist needed to be crushed before it could grow stronger. In Halzar's mind, the capture of these children was just the beginning. He had heard of humanity's strength, their will to survive, and he knew that showing their cruelty would demoralize the rest of the human race. However, in his arrogance, he underestimated the humans. He believed they would cower before the Araxian might. What Halzar didn't know was that this attack, this brutal act of cruelty, would awaken something in humanity, something far darker and more dangerous than anything the Araxians could have imagined. Back on Zephyra, the news spread like wildfire. The human forces quickly realized that their children were the primary target. Desperate messages were sent out across the colony. Help was needed, and quickly, parents and soldiers alike rallied together, ready to fight back. But the question lingered in everyone's mind. Was it already too late? Leela had no time to waste. She couldn't just hide in the forest. She had seen too much. She had seen her friends, her classmates, taken away, and she knew something had to be done. Clutching the small piece of technology, a communicator she had grabbed from the fallen body of a soldier, she sent a distress signal, hoping it would reach someone. anyone who could help. The minutes felt like hours as she sat in the forest, her breath steadying as she tried to plan her next move. She had no idea how many others had escaped, but she knew that if anyone was to save the children, it would have to be the humans themselves. And in that moment, Leela realized something important. The attack on their children would only make humanity stronger. The Araxians may have thought they had won, but they had made a grave mistake. As the first Araxian ships prepared to depart with their captured children, a new feeling began to spread across the galaxy. The humans had always been underestimated, but now, the Araxians had done something they would soon regret. The galaxy would not know what hit it. Leela's escape, her warning, and the determination of humanity's survivors were just the first spark of a fire that would soon consume the Araxians. The universe was about to learn that the human spirit, when provoked, could be more terrifying than any alien weapon. The battle for Zephyra was only the beginning. The humans were coming. And they were coming with a vengeance. The awakening of humanity's wrath. The cries of the children still echoed in the minds of those who witnessed the attack on Zephyra. It wasn't just the loss of the innocent that haunted them. It was the sheer brutality of it all. Humanity, long regarded as a species that valued peace, had been pushed to the brink. Now, a simmering rage began to build in their hearts, one that would soon unleash a fury never before seen in the galaxy. Across the human colonies, word spread of the attack. The news reached every corner of the galaxy. Families torn apart, children taken, the heart of humanity struck at its very core. For the first time in their history, the human race was united by a single, undeniable truth. No one, not even the most powerful empire in the galaxy, could hurt their children without consequences. The human response was swift and decisive. Zephyra was just one planet, one colony, but it symbolized something far larger. To the human race, this wasn't just an attack on their home. It was an attack on everything they stood for. A call to arms was sent out, not only to the colonies closest to Zephyra, but to every human settlement scattered across the stars. No one could remain passive. No one could remain neutral. Admirals, generals, and strategists began organizing the response, but it was not just the military leaders who were ready for battle. The people of the colonies, farmers, engineers, doctors, and civilians, all rose to the challenge. The galaxy had never seen a species so fiercely protective of their own. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its will to survive. And now, they would fight with every ounce of that strength. Meanwhile, the Araxian fleet had already left Zephyra, making its way into deep space, their ships carrying the captured children. The Araxians, believing they had achieved victory, showed no sign of concern. They were, after all, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, but what they didn't know was that the act of taking those children was their greatest mistake. Leela, the young girl who had escaped the initial assault, had sent out a distress signal just before disappearing into the forest. It was a simple, encrypted message, a signal anyone would have assumed to be intercepted or ignored. But that wasn't the case. Unbeknownst to the Araxians, the humans had long developed a network of surveillance and communications that extended far beyond their immediate reach. The signal was received by a distant ship, a military vessel, the Nighthawk, stationed on the outskirts of the solar system. The crew, trained to respond to the worst possible scenarios, immediately flagged the distress signal. They had no idea just how dire the situation was, but they knew something was terribly wrong. Captain Marla Hayes, the leader of the Nighthawk, had served in the human military for over 2 decades. She had seen countless battles, faced unimaginable dangers, but nothing had ever shaken her like the message she now held in her hands. The report was chilling. Children taken, families destroyed, and the unthinkable. Alien forces invading human colonies. This was no longer just a rescue mission. This was war. Without hesitation, Captain Hayes ordered the crew to prepare for immediate action. The Nighthawk had been designed for covert operations, a ghost ship in the vastness of space, capable of reaching places others couldn't even dream of. She knew that every moment counted. Lila's message had been their first clue, but there were more answers to be found. The Nighthawk would track the Oraxian fleet down, and they would learn exactly what had happened to the children of Zephyra. As the ship prepared to leave the planet's orbit, Captain Hayes couldn't help but think of her own children back home on Earth. The thought of them in danger was unbearable, and that fear transformed into an all-consuming rage. She would stop at nothing to ensure that the Oraxians paid for their cruelty. But Captain Hayes wasn't alone in her fury. Across the galaxy, every human who heard the news felt the same way. The Oraxians had awakened something within humanity that no one could control. On the battlefield, the humans had always been underestimated. The aliens saw them as soft, peaceful, unprepared for true war. But now, humanity was rising up. In every human settlement, from the backwater colonies to the heart of Earth itself, people were joining the cause. Fighters were trained. Ships were mobilized. Humanity's fury, once quiet and dormant, was now a roaring storm that no force in the galaxy could stop. The Oraxians may have thought they had achieved victory, but they had underestimated the human spirit. And soon, they would realize just how powerful that spirit truly was. The Oraxians had made a grave mistake, one they would soon regret, because humanity's fury was not just an emotion. It was a force that would reshape the galaxy itself. The gathering storm. The Oraxians were too confident. They had wiped out entire colonies, decimated fleets, and captured the most precious of human lives, yet they failed to grasp the true nature of their enemy. As the Nighthawk drifted quietly through the stars, Captain Hayes reviewed the mission logs. Her face was tense, her eyes scanning the cold data on the screen. Every calculated move, every strategy had to be perfect. But this was not just a military operation. This was something deeper, a personal war. The Oraxians, large and powerful, had never expected to face such resistance. Their arrogance had been their downfall. They had always seen the humans as small, weak, unprepared for the horrors of war. But as the human fleet began to assemble in the far reaches of the galaxy, they were starting to realize their mistake. Humanity's military might was not to be underestimated, and their will to fight was something the Oraxians could not comprehend. In every corner of human space, civilians and soldiers alike had rallied together. It wasn't just the fleet that was gathering. The entire human race had united. From the deep colonies on distant planets to the shining cities on Earth, every human was part of this. This wasn't just about military strength. It was about a bond forged through shared pain and outrage. The attack on Zephyra had woken something primal in humanity, a thirst for justice, and the desire to protect what mattered most. "Captain, we're ready," Lieutenant Harris spoke, standing at attention. His voice was steady, but the undercurrent of anger was palpable. He had grown up on Zephyra, and the loss of his own family haunted him. Now he was here, ready to fight for the children, for humanity, for vengeance. Captain Hayes nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We're going after them." The Nighthawk wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, ships of all sizes, from the massive dreadnoughts to smaller, faster attack craft, began to assemble. It was the first true alliance of humanity's people. It was a united front, ready to strike with everything they had. Every ship carried not only weapons but a story of lives lost, of children taken, of families shattered. Every captain, every soldier, every pilot had something to fight for. On the far side of the galaxy, the Oraxian fleet was blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Their commanders were focused on their prize, human children, imprisoned in their hold, but they didn't see the bigger picture. They didn't understand what humanity could do when pushed to the limit. As the Oraxian fleet made its way through deep space, they were confident in their security, unaware that the tides of war were turning. In the heart of the human fleet, Admiral Clark stood on the bridge of his flagship. His experience was unmatched, his resolve unwavering. The human fleet was not only about firepower. It was about resilience. For every Oraxian ship that appeared, another human ship would rise to meet it. The entire galaxy would see what humanity was capable of. As they approached the Oraxian fleet, a quiet tension filled the air. Every officer knew the stakes. The mission was clear: rescue the children, defeat the Oraxians, and send a message that would echo across the universe. The battle ahead would be unlike any other. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, and no one, not even the mightiest of alien races, would stand in their way. The moment was upon them. The human fleet was nearly in position. Captain Hayes's heart raced, but there was no fear, only determination. She glanced at the view screen as the distant stars stretched across the black void. They were no longer just a fleet of warships. They were the embodiment of every human who had been wronged. They were the force that would right the wrongs of the Oraxians. With a steady hand, Captain Hayes gave the command: all ships, engage at will. The human fleet surged forward, ready to face the Oraxians in a battle that would reshape the galaxy. There was no turning back now. This was not just a rescue mission. This was humanity's war. Summary of Part 3. In Part 3, the human fleet continues to prepare for the showdown with the Oraxians. The response to the attack on Zephyra is not just a military effort. It's a united front, with every corner of humanity rallying to the cause. Captain Hayes and the crew of the Nighthawk are joined by hundreds of ships, all ready to take down the Oraxian fleet. As the human forces prepare to strike, the Oraxians remain unaware of the storm approaching them. Tensions rise as the human fleet engages, and the battle for justice begins. The suspense builds as the first engagement nears, with the galaxy poised for a conflict that could shift the balance of power forever. The Oraxians may be powerful, but they have no idea what they are about to face. The next part will delve into the intensity of the battle as humanity shows the full force of its might. The battle begins. The moment the command was given, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The human fleet, a constellation of ships stretched across the vastness of space, moved as one. The hum of the engines was the only sound in the quiet bridge of the Nighthawk. Captain Hayes stood tall, her eyes fixed on the view screen. She could see the distant, glittering lights of the Oraxian fleet, still unaware of the impending onslaught. A cold smile spread across her face. The time for waiting was over. In the heart of the human fleet, every ship was ready. The cadets, the veterans, all of them had trained for this moment. And now it was their time to prove their worth. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for the children that had been taken, for the families shattered across the galaxy, and for the very survival of humanity. The first wave of Oraxian ships came into view. The Oraxians, sleek and deadly, seemed to glide through space with ease. Their ships were built for speed and destruction, but their arrogance made them careless. They hadn't even begun to understand the depths of humanity's fury. Target lock on the lead ship. Lieutenant Harris's voice broke through the silence. Fire, Captain Hayes ordered, her voice unwavering. The silence was shattered by the roar of weapons fire as the first human ships launched their attacks. A brilliant stream of energy beams surged across the space, striking the Oraxian vessels with precision. Sparks erupted from the Oraxian ships as their shields flickered and failed, unable to withstand the force of humanity's weaponry. But the Oraxians fought back fiercely, launching their own barrage of fire at the advancing human ships. The battle had begun. On the Nighthawk, the crew was a whirlwind of activity. Every officer moved with purpose, coordinating attacks, relaying information, and responding to the chaos unfolding around them. The tension was thick in the air, but it was tempered by something else, something that only the humans seemed to possess: a fierce resolve. "We've breached their line, Captain," Lieutenant Harris shouted as the human ships pushed through the Oraxian defenses. But there was no time to celebrate. The Oraxian fleet was massive, and the fight was far from over. Captain Hayes watched the battle unfold. It was intense. Alien ships darting through space, exchanging fire with human vessels. But what struck her the most was the unity of the human forces. No matter their background, no matter their previous experiences, they were all fighting as one. They were more than soldiers, they were avengers. Every explosion, every collision, felt personal. The human ships were smaller, but they were nimble, able to weave through the debris of the battlefield with deadly precision. And with each strike, they grew more confident. The Auraxians were strong, yes, but humanity's creativity and adaptability made them a deadly adversary. As the battle raged on, the Auraxian fleet began to falter. For every ship they lost, the human forces gained ground. The Auraxians were not prepared for this. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight not just for survival, but for vengeance. They had attacked innocent children, and now they were paying the price. A sudden flash of light illuminated the battlefield as a massive Auraxian dreadnought unleashed its full firepower on a nearby human cruiser. The ship buckled under the onslaught, but it didn't break. The crew fought back with everything they had, determined to hold the line. "Target that dreadnought's engines," Captain Hayes commanded. "We take down their command ship, and the rest will fall." The crew of the Nighthawk worked in perfect synchrony as they targeted the Auraxian dreadnought's engines. The massive ship fought back with all its might, but the human fleet was relentless. One by one, the Auraxian ships fell, and the tide of battle slowly turned in humanity's favor. But the Auraxians weren't giving up. They called in reinforcements, and a new wave of ships appeared on the horizon. The battle was far from over. Humanity had made its mark, but the Auraxians were not ready to back down. For Captain Hayes and the rest of the fleet, this was more than just a military operation. It was a statement. They would not be silenced. They would not be intimidated. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and now the entire galaxy would see what they were capable of. They were not weak. They were not powerless. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they would fight until the very last breath to protect their own. As the battle continued, it was clear this was only the beginning. The tide turns. The battle raged on, a chaotic dance of explosions and fire that lit up the cold expanse of space. The Auraxian fleet, once so confident, was now on the defensive. Humanity's fury, once unleashed, seemed unstoppable. The Auraxian ships were no longer darting gracefully through space. Instead, they were stumbling, trying desperately to regroup, but the human fleet was relentless. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris called from his station, his eyes wide with intensity. "We've knocked out their main line. They're retreating, but they're calling for reinforcements. More ships are coming in from their outer colonies." Captain Hayes's lips tightened as she surveyed the situation. The Auraxians had underestimated humanity's resolve, but now the question was whether they could hold their advantage. With the reinforcements coming in, the balance of power could shift in an instant. "We can't let them regroup," Hayes replied, her voice cold but determined. "We push forward. Every ship counts, every second matters. We strike before their reinforcements arrive." Her order was met with swift compliance. The human fleet surged forward, cutting through space with deadly precision. They were no longer just fighting to protect their children, their families, or their homes. Now they were fighting to prove their strength, to show the galaxy that they would not back down, no matter the odds. On the bridge of the Nighthawk, the crew was working as one, each officer and cadet moving with practiced skill. The atmosphere was electric with tension, but there was no fear. Humanity had shown that it could take a beating and keep coming back, stronger than ever. The Auraxians might have been formidable, but they had never faced anything like humanity's fury. As the reinforcements arrived, the human ships formed into tighter formations, coordinating their attacks with military precision. The Auraxians, caught off guard by the sheer speed and adaptability of the humans, struggled to respond. Every time the Auraxians thought they had gained the upper hand, the humans were there, striking back harder. "Incoming," a voice called from the weapons station, and the bridge fell silent. A massive Araxian warship had broken through the perimeter, heading straight for the Nighthawk. It was a behemoth, its shields already flaring as it unleashed a barrage of firepower. "Brace for impact," Captain Hayes shouted. The human crew braced themselves, but they were not passive. They retaliated almost immediately. The Nighthawk fired back with everything it had, the ship's powerful energy beams crashing against the Araxian warship's shields. Sparks and explosions lit up the sky as the Araxian ship groaned under the pressure. "Target their engines," Captain Hayes barked. "We disable them. Then we finish this." The Nighthawk's weapons officer nodded, quickly inputting commands. The energy blasts from the human ship found their mark, hitting the Araxian warship's engine compartment. The massive ship faltered, its engines sparking and flickering. Slowly, it began to drift out of control, losing speed. The Araxians were in a panic. Their reinforcements were arriving, but they weren't ready for the humans' brutal efficiency. The humans were everywhere, attacking with the ferocity of a species that had known nothing but survival. The Araxian fleet was in chaos, their once imposing battle formations falling apart. "We've got them on the ropes," Lieutenant Harris called. "They're breaking apart." The human fleet surged forward once more, a wave of ships relentlessly pushing against the Araxian resistance. No matter how many ships the Araxians sent, humanity's fury only grew stronger. The Araxian forces were disorganized, and their morale had plummeted. "Keep pushing," Captain Hayes ordered. "We finish this now." The human ships closed in, and soon, the Araxian fleet was on the verge of collapse. As their ships exploded and debris littered the black void of space, the remaining Araxians began to retreat in disarray. A triumphant cheer broke out among the human fleet as the Araxian forces scattered. The tide had well and truly turned. But even as the victory seemed certain, Captain Hayes knew that this was only one battle in a much larger war. There would be more challenges, more fights. But today, humanity had proven its worth. The final moments of the battle were a blur of fire and destruction. The Araxian fleet had been shattered, and now, all that remained was the cleanup. The human fleet, though battered, stood tall. As the last of the Araxian ships retreated into the void, the human ships remained victorious. Captain Hayes stood at the command station, her eyes surveying the aftermath. It was over for now. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of. They had struck back with the fury of a species that had been pushed too far. And though the Araxians would live to fight another day, they would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. But Captain Hayes also knew that the victory was not without cost. The battle had taken its toll. Many ships had been lost, many lives sacrificed. But humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. You attack us, and we will make you regret it. The aftermath, and the cost of victory. As the last remnants of the Araxian fleet vanished into the depths of space, silence descended over the human ships. The battle, one that would be remembered for generations, was over. The Araxian threat had been dealt a severe blow, but the cost of victory was evident. Captain Hayes stood at the observation deck of the Nighthawk, staring out at the wreckage that now littered the once clear expanse of space. The debris of shattered ships, both human and Araxian, floated like lifeless husks. The stench of smoke and burning metal still lingered, even within the ship's atmosphere. It was a reminder of the brutality of war, the destruction and the lives lost. Her fingers tapped lightly on the control panel, but her eyes remained fixed on the distant remnants of the battle. There was no time to celebrate. The fleet had won, yes, but they had paid a steep price. The Araxians had not been the only ones who had suffered. Many good men and women had fallen, their ships reduced to nothing more than wreckage in the cold expanse of space. "Captain, we've managed to salvage some of the wreckage from the battle," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice laced with a mix of exhaustion and relief. "It's mostly debris, but we've recovered some valuable tech from the Araxian ships. It'll give us an edge moving forward." Hayes nodded but didn't respond immediately. Her mind was elsewhere, haunted by the faces of those who would never return home, the families they would never see, the children they would never raise. The thought made her heart heavy. Every victory in war carried with it a personal cost, something that no medal or honor could ever replace. "Any word from the fleet?" she asked, her voice now steady, her gaze still locked on the debris. "We're coordinating with the other ships, Captain," Harris answered. "The damage report is coming in. We've lost 5 ships completely, and several others are heavily damaged. Medical teams are working around the clock to treat the wounded. Casualties are high, but we've managed to save most of the crew." The numbers were staggering, but the sense of pride was undeniable. Humanity had fought for its survival and its dignity. They had fought not just for themselves, but for every child, every family that had been threatened by the Araxians. And in that, there was a strength that no amount of destruction could take away. As Hayes walked back to the command center, she could feel the weight of her crew's exhaustion. Despite the victory, there was no time for rest. The war was far from over. This was merely the beginning of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Araxians would regroup. They would lick their wounds and plan their next move. But now, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had seen it firsthand. The kind of fury humanity could unleash when pushed to the brink. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris said again, pulling her from her thoughts. "There's something else." Hayes turned her gaze toward him, her brow furrowing. "We intercepted a transmission from the Araxians before they retreated," he explained. "It was a distress signal, not directed to us but to someone else. Someone bigger." Hayes's heart skipped a beat. The Araxians had just been defeated, but if they were calling for reinforcements, there was an even greater threat looming on the horizon. The enemy they had just faced might have been formidable, but whoever the Araxians were calling to might be something far worse. "Who were they calling?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "We're still decrypting the message," Harris replied. "But the urgency in their tone, it's unlike anything we've encountered before. They're terrified." Captain Hayes's mind raced. The Araxians had been ruthless, and yet they had feared something else. What could be worse than a species capable of threatening an entire galaxy? "We'll have answers soon enough," Hayes muttered, her hand clenching into a fist. "But right now, we need to focus on securing our victory. We need to tend to our wounded, repair our ships, and regroup." She paused, looking over her shoulder at the massive holographic map of the galaxy. The Araxian threat had been neutralized, for now, but the shadows of something greater were beginning to loom. "We've won today," she said, her voice ringing with quiet resolve. "But the real battle is yet to come." The crew fell silent as Hayes spoke, the weight of her words sinking in. There was no time to rest, no time for complacency. Humanity had proven itself capable of unimaginable strength, but that strength would need to be tested again. And this time, it might not just be the Araxians they had to face, the calm before the storm. As the days passed, the Nighthawk and the rest of the human fleet slowly recovered from the fierce battle with the Araxians. The sounds of mechanical repairs and the hum of medical facilities were constant in the background, but there was an odd sense of calm on the ship. It was as though the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars twinkled faintly in the distance, their serenity in stark contrast to the chaos of the battle that had just taken place. She had been in countless battles before, but there was something different about this one. The victory had been hard-fought, but it had left her with more questions than answers. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris's voice cut through her thoughts, his tone grave. "We've decrypted the Araxian transmission. You need to see this." Hayes turned, her stomach tightening as she followed Harris to the communication console. The data was still fresh, the Araxian signal encoded with a complexity that had initially eluded their best decrypting systems. But now it was clear. On the screen, a distorted image appeared, barely recognizable. It was a holographic message, one that had been intended for someone far beyond the Oraxians' reach. The message crackled to life, its contents sending an immediate shiver down Captain Hayes's spine. The voice that came through was alien, horribly alien. It was distorted, twisted by static, but the urgency in it was unmistakable. The humans have awakened. The Deathworlders. They are not to be underestimated. Prepare the fleet, prepare the Legion. The threat is real. The transmission was filled with ominous silence after that, but the weight of the words hung in the air. Deathworlders. That's what the Oraxians had called humanity. It was a chilling acknowledgement of the sheer danger humanity posed to the galaxy. They know about us, Harris whispered, his voice barely audible as the implications sank in. Hayes's mind raced. The Oraxians had been formidable, but if they were calling for reinforcements from a legion, it meant that the galaxy was about to be pulled into something far darker than they had imagined. And the fear in the Oraxians' voice, real, raw, and undeniable, spoke volumes. Whatever this legion was, it was something to be feared. Who are they calling? Hayes asked, her voice cold but steady. Who is this legion? Harris hesitated, his fingers dancing over the console, trying to pull more data from the encrypted message. We're still working on that, Captain, but one thing is clear. The Oraxians are terrified. This legion is something ancient, something they have avoided at all costs. Hayes's mind spun. The Oraxians had been invincible in their own right, terrorizing countless species, and yet they had called for help. This wasn't just a threat. It was a warning that whatever the Legion was, it was powerful beyond imagination. We need to prepare, Hayes said, turning to face her crew. The war is far from over. We've only just begun to see the depths of the darkness lurking in this galaxy. The Oraxians thought they could take humanity down, but now we know the truth. We are a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy has just learned what happens when you push humanity to the brink. The crew stood in silence, each person lost in their own thoughts. The challenge ahead was monumental, but they had faced the impossible before, and each time they had triumphed. Humanity had learned to fight not just for survival, but for justice. Start the preparations, Hayes ordered, her voice hard with determination. We'll be ready for whatever comes next. As the crew moved swiftly to carry out her orders, Hayes took one last look at the stars. The calmness of space seemed so deceptive now. The Oraxians were no longer a threat, but the message was clear. Something much darker was coming, and humanity would need to be stronger than ever before to face it. The sound of boots on metal echoed across the bridge as officers hurried to their stations. Humanity had just made its mark on the galaxy, but now the galaxy was about to feel the full wrath of the most dangerous species it had ever encountered. We are humanity, Hayes whispered to herself, and we will not be silenced. The stars outside the ship, once symbols of peaceful exploration, now seemed to loom ominously over the crew. Hayes knew that the real battle was just beginning. It would be a fight for survival, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. And no one would be safe from the storm that was about to come.